to Coffee Talk with Design Research Collective. I'm so excited for my friend, our guest today. His name is Chris Svensrud. I've known him a long time. Actually worked on several products together in our careers at Target. But Chris has done amazing things in and outside of Target, and I can't wait for you to hear his stories, his point of view, and also what he's thinking about. Chris is a serial entrepreneur. He started several companies, had several successful products. He's always thinking, always designing, always creating new. And as you'll hear today, he's always looking to kind of disrupt and have people think differently and think in new ways about our life and about the products that exist and maybe don't exist yet. Chris started as a physicist in California. He worked in Silicon Valley for a while and then basically disrupted the mattress business as an inventor and business founder. From then, he went on to work at IDEO and then a stint at Target, where he has patents, several patents, including a walking sleeping bag that was inspired by a Bonnaroo Music Festival research trip. Chris and I went on that Bonnaroo Music Festival research trip together as we were both working at Target, and there's a lot of fun stories around that. He developed a treeless hammock that basically went viral and is now running several companies as a serial entrepreneur and expert designer. If you listen, you'll learn why Chris is both a brilliant, disruptive designer, incredibly deep thinker, and the best damn human-centered design basketball player I know. Listen more to figure out what that means, and I hope you enjoy.
Thanks, Sarah. That was nice.
Yeah. So besides a mattress, we got a walking sleeping bag and a bunch of sporting goods gear. Are there any other products or spaces that you've dipped your toe into that you're...
Recently, as you asked me this question prior to taping, I was thinking, and I didn't say it, but I got into website design, which a lot of people interact with. And I found it fascinating because of that, right? Like you get instant interactions with that, hundreds of thousands of people use it a month or more, right?
Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of fascinating. That stands outside of the realm of physical product where I traditionally have been designing.
Well, I was excited to talk about your background.
Yeah.
Because I always think it's wild what your degree is in, and you grew up in California. So walk us back to growing up in California, studying what you did, and then getting into what you do today, which is entrepreneurship, product design, marketing, just man of all trades.
Okay.
Creative trades.
That might be your only question you get.
Yeah, I know. Here we go. Welcome to the journey.
In college, I actually applied and got into the School of Psychology at a state school in California. I thought that'd be great. Mainly because I thought I knew people really well. I was like, this would be easy, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then after a couple years in college, I decided, let's do the hardest thing they have there. What could that be, right? So I and a couple friends entered the physics department. So I ended up studying that. And really, I think the two are very connected. It's kind of to understand, why are we here? Or, what makes us human? The same questions.
I never thought of physics being that.
Oh yeah, physics is the most fundamental science of what are we doing here and how do we know that? That's kind of the question. And the interesting thing about it is those are the questions that I got to study of how people answered that. Of what are we doing here? How did we get here? And then that's the art of that. And so from that, I ended up designing children's mattresses, obviously. How did I get to that? I worked in Silicon Valley for a little while with physics, using my optics, background, and that was interesting. And at the same time, and I think while studying physics, a famous physicist, Richard Feynman, who is known in that circle, maybe sometimes outside, he said something that stuck with me, that still sticks with me, and that kind of guided my career, you know, he asked why, you know, you've done a lot of different things. He said like the most interesting people he knew didn't know what they wanted to be when they were 30, didn't know what they wanted to be when they're 40, didn't know what they wanted to be when they're 50. You know, it's just a constant exploration. And I've kind of been fortunate to be able to do that, just explore, you know, and it's been fascinating. And then I approach everything that way as well. It's just always a question of learning new things. So, you know, before we get to like, how did you go from physics to infant mattresses? You know, part of that process in physics is asking the questions and doing things differently just to see if you can get different answers. If it, you know, comes out with the same answer, then it must be true, right? So you approach it at different angles. So that was part of it, which led me to some of this journey of just still, you know, doing things differently and trying to figure it out.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you've had so many success stories, so many interesting stories of products.
Yeah.
That people use today. Like you all might be sleeping on a mattress, or baby might be sleeping on a mattress that Chris and I know his wife Shannon have thought about and designed and developed.
Well, we were there at the beginning of the foam mattress revolution. So when and this is unbeknownst to me, but we were in the so I went from Silicon Valley to the garment industry, following my wife and wanting to really, again, like explore what does it mean to like develop a business and start a business and grow a business and create a brand and marketing, you know, and it just happened to be in infants, or children's clothing, right? And we just followed that opportunity, and in that industry we were looking for a way to disrupt it, right? And where things needed a newness to them.
This
right?
comes from you, that inspiration to disrupt it?
Disrupt, oh yeah. I mean, to a fault. That's partially my personality, disrupting, you know, just to see, and again, it's like just to see what will happen, you know, because you don't know, right? Like it can produce uncommon results that you may enjoy, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of it, right?
Were you like that as a kid?
Oh yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I think we all do that in a way, right? Like music is disrupting, right? Like you hear it, it breaks the silence, and like, you know, as your husband's a musician, like what he does is disrupting, right? Like he's breaking silence, you know, purposefully to get people to react, right? Music.
Absolutely.
There you go. So I do the same thing. I don't play an instrument. I try. But, you know, like if you think about it that way, like, you know, it's not a disruption could be a very beautiful, wonderful thing, right? Like you don't have to think of it as like, oh, disrupting, like you're like being loud in class, you know. And as a kid, you mentioned that, yeah, it's probably loud in class and disrupting, but you know, in other ways, it could be like music, right?
Yeah, we've worked together, so you're loud at work and
you know, all
in
that.
the best way.
Yeah, so much so.
Okay, that's really good story. So if there's any parents out there that have disruptive children, there's hope that they get to become this like successful entrepreneur, creative visionary, futurist, like my friend Chris.
So to the mattresses, we'll go to that too, because you did ask that question. We were there looking for disruption in the infant industry, and we were there and for parents of our age or new parents now, there was a stroller that came out. This is a weird story, but as a designer, person who loves art, architecture, and just things that look cool, there was a stroller that came out. We didn't even have kids, and we'd be at these trade shows for kids and infants, and we'd see the stroller. We've seen it like a couple times. Like, what is that thing? It like just looks so cool, you know, like looked like a fancy, you know, sports car, but it was a stroller, right? Okay. And so like you'd talk to people about it and be like, yeah, it's this $1,500 stroller.
You're kidding?
Like, no, not at all. We were like, oh my gosh, that's nuts. But then everybody wanted one, and people started buying them. And then, you know, the infant industry went from, you know, we buy $35 strollers to we buy $1,500 strollers, and it became like status things. But like this stroller really was an exercise in, you know, human-centered design. Like it felt good, it rolled good. Like we had one, and
you bought one.
Oh, you had to. Like it was awesome, and we probably put, I don't know, 100,000 miles on it. I mean, our son learned to sleep by us walking him around San Francisco, like miles and miles, to our fault. Like that was our habit, of getting him to sleep by, let's go on a walk, and pushing the stroller around. And it did everything. The stroller was fantastic, super ultra lightweight, and just, did everything you wanted a stroller to do. Not that you even knew you needed a stroller to do things, but there was this lack of latent needs that we didn't know we needed until someone discovered them and put it together. And the story behind the stroller is kind of fantastic. It's not even my product, but the story behind it, he was from the Netherlands. He wanted to design boats and catamarans and racing boats, and then out of that, he had a friend, the child, ended up designing the stroller, and that became like his first project, from catamarans to infant strollers. So I went from optics to infant mattresses. He went to catamarans to infant strollers.
Can I guess the brand?
Yeah, try.
Bugaboo.
Yes.
Oh, for sure. Because I had babies and I pined for a Bugaboo.
Yeah. Yeah.
but wasn't going to spend that much. But yeah, if you think of like the Graco stroller and like.
Yeah, not everybody. We're talking, we were in San Francisco, LA, New York, Chicago. People where $2,000 store wasn't a thing, But then that opened up the market to all of a sudden, people wanted $2,000 cribs. They wanted $150. We had friends that had silk diaper bags, $300 diaper bags, right? Everything just started going, and we're like, oh, in that industry, and this was, from a marketing, from a business standpoint, right? This is kind of where it started of where does someone need to look at a solution, right? And we looked at mattresses, because no one had touch mattresses. I was surprised when we bought our first mattress, it cost us $7 and was covered in plastic.
Oh,
and this is insane,
for our sweet babies. For our
but that's what we did, right? And then there was a few organic ones, but you had to know a guy and call someone I need an organic mattress.
like a black market.
Don't tell anybody. There was a few. Well, long story short, or long story long, right? It's probably my way. There, humans, right? We used to sleep on hay, right? And before there was plastics, right? We made hay mattresses. We made feather mattresses. We made, the fancy mattresses. Now you buy what Tom Cruise and whoever he's married to, whoever. I want to say Penelope Cruz or Surrey.
This is his daughter. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Is he still married? No, he's divorced.
Don't know.
Okay.
But anyways, we were getting a mattress. He sleeps on this Swedish mattress made out of horsehair. It's a $25,000 and just fancy.
No way.
Super nice.
You forgot about the waterbed.
Oh, well, I actually know the history of waterbeds too, which started in Mill Valley. That's a crazy story. But I didn't write it. We actually had friends that wrote the screenplay for basically the waterbed wars. It was insane.
Oh my gosh, we have to, pin in that. We're going to Google it. Everyone Google waterbed wars.
Okay, so now you could kind of understand, I like to, get into something and learn a little bit about it, right? So, infant mattresses, right? So I started looking at that opportunity, and it really was, we were in the infant space. I wasn't designing anything. I was working with Shannon, my wife, supporting her in all the business activities and doing all the marketing and the business development work while she was doing all the product design. And we were just looking for a space to grow a business in a niche, to find an area of innovation, just by pure, just looking at the numbers. There was no, talking to anybody, human-centered design stuff, except, where can we make a splash? Just looking at it that way. And mattresses came up. And then I just took this dive into it, and I was talking and kind of designed the mattress from the ground up. I took it all apart, not physically, but mentally. There's a thing in physics, and I'm going to say the word wrong, but it's a German word meaning thought experiment. And so the famous physicists, they used to so if this atom reacts with this atom, what's going to happen? and then they'll think about it and do all the math in their head. Because they didn't have the tools to actually test it. They didn't exist at that time.
It's all theoretical.
Right. And so they think about it and write some stuff down, write it down, and then, okay, that would work, or not that would work, right? And then later on, as in the EMC squared example is, that came about, it was just on paper, and then they proved it through experiments, actually, when we had technology to be able to do so. So anyways, I kind of approached the mattress that way, what is it supposed to do? Holds you up, right? And how do you want that environment to be? We're talking about infants and babies, and so what we ended up, and how I ended up designing a mattress sort of like a layer of skin where it was breathable, provided heat, it was passive, and supported an infant in its natural environment. So it actually had a rough, pebbled-like surface that we designed for airflow to go through it, because we did a lot of actually SIDS research, and I talked to experts from leading universities in the field of SIDS and sleep, and designed this to be sort of like a environment where as if you're holding a baby, and the mattress represented that and acted that way. And one of the brilliant, so we worked also with a really brilliant marketing firm at the time, and we made this, pebbled surface, because scientifically it made a lot of sense. It was not even, it was asymmetrical, had all these bumps and valleys, which an infant would be really used to, right? A natural filling surface instead of a sterile, flat space.
In nature, nothing's necessarily flat.
For sure.
Water.
Yeah, for sure. Not even water, right? So they took it and was oh my gosh, that's the most brilliant thing. As soon as you put that up on in a store, someone's going to walk by and look at it and what is that thing? And then all of a sudden you've started this conversation, with a potential, buyer or user of the product. And then they said, well, let's make them blue and green and orange and yellow. And I was oh yeah, that's awesome. We'll just do that because that'd be amazing. So.
Wow, so
that's part of the story.
I get it. I think you started with the business idea, which a lot of us human-centered designers who work with big companies have to do. We start with a space that we know there's business opportunity, but then you dove into the human problem, the human needs. You learned a lot about SIDS.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest unmet need of a new parent, if I do say so myself, is that fear. Is your child healthy, or are they going to be okay, especially when they're sleeping? And the fact that you developed a product that in some way meets that need, or at least quells that fear, that in some way is huge.
Yeah, it was the oddest thing too, because when I was putting this together, right, I was talking with people at UCLA, at the medical center there, and how they did studies where having a fan in the room opposed to not having a fan in the room reduced the incidence of SIDS by double digits, but they weren't really sure of why. You could say that is, but they don't know why it was, so it wasn't conclusive, right? Of here's the mechanism of why, and as we're putting this company together, and getting people on board, and CFO, and having their roles, they're well, you're the designer, and I'm I don't know, what is that even, a designer? I never even heard of that word. I'm the scientist guy. Just making this thing, designer. It was the weirdest word to me. You're a designer. Oh, what's that? A designer? That's the person who draws the cool pictures and makes these really interesting things. That's the artist. That's my next phase. I'm not a designer, And then I finally stuck one day. Oh yeah, I am a designer. I guess you're right. I designed this, but it was so weird. I totally didn't even look at it that way. It was pure, whoa, I guess I am. I didn't go in thinking that, right?
Yeah, you're designer of disruptions.
You could say, yeah, sure,
you might
sure.
That,
but it was pure, it was a human-centered design project, for sure. Because I'm not an infant, we were designing purely for, and the other interesting thing about it is you're designing for someone, and this is even at the time, as we would explain it, and we were trying to investors and stuff. You're designing for someone who can't speak, talk, give you any feedback whatsoever, right? And that's your end customer. But really, you have a few customers, but that was one of them, right? It's the parents, it's the stores, right? The buyers who are going to buy it to put your product in the store. So there's layers of people you're designing for.
All right, I'm going to go off script, and just because you always have interesting answers. Human-centered design, what do you think is like the future of it? Where do you think it's going? I'm sure you have an opinion on. I mean, there's folks that say like design thinking is dead, and I totally get that. So what do you think?
Yeah, it's not dead. No way, by any means. Like that's all we've ever been doing as a species, right? Is designing for ourselves. How could we not? I mean, who else are we designing for? Like all this, right? Whether you're consciousness or not, and that's part of the example I give. Like, I never knew I was even doing it until someone said, like, hey, you're doing that. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not. I'm just making something like the best I can, and you know, not really thinking conscious about the process, but conscious about the process. But my process was a scientific process, which is the same thing as this human-centered design, right? It's a science now, I would say.
Yeah.
The future of it is this is things I like to talk about. I'll have to laugh at myself. I'm say a joke that some people may or may not like. I don't know if it's a joke, but it's a joke. I met up with a friend that I haven't seen probably for 30 years just last week. We're just reconnecting. He said, what's going on? What are you doing? I'm like, what I've been thinking about lately is like, you need to be all cryogenically frozen, wake up in about 100,000 years. That'd be so good. That'd be so great. Because we're going to have a lot of things. We're new to this as humans, right? Like we've been, as a society, 10,000 years, that's nothing. I mean, looking from a cosmological scale, millions of years, we're talking 10,000, this is nothing, and like, so, like, where is the future of design? Like, I mean, it's just only getting better and more amazing. So, the way I describe human-centered design, or like what it is or how it can be, I start with an analogy, right?
What's that?
Oh, basketball, right? So, I'm not good at basketball, right? But I know the rules, right? Anyone can learn the rules, right? Same with human-centered design, right? You can learn the rules, right? It's a science. There's like some parameters to it, right?
Yeah.
But some of us are better at basketball than others, and it takes time to learn those things, right? But we can all practice and have fun and enjoy it, right? But then again, like, there's certain qualities of a basketball player that makes you really good at basketball. There's certain qualities of a person that makes you really good at human-centered design, And why I think the practice is something that for all us to enjoy, like sports. Doesn't even have to be basketball, it could be sports, right? Human-centered design is the same way. And I think we've gone through this phase where companies have like, we got to teach everybody human-centered design, and it's going to revolutionize our business. And, once we all know this, like, we're just going to be able to make the perfect things and the perfect products that everybody's going to want, right? But you can't just say, like, we're all going to be great basketball players and, like, we're all going to win the NBA. Like, that's the thing. Like, so we went through, like, this, like, little, renaissance of, like, hey, we could all do human-centered design. But then we realized, like, some of us are, like, really good basketball players. And other of us aren't. I don't know if that was the answer to your question, but that's kind of my viewpoint on, like, the future. Like, we're coming back to the reality of, and human-centered design, like, goes back 30-something years now with IDEO and some other companies that started to bring it out of the military, right? You know about this, human factors.
Well, I know about human factors.
Yeah, well, so that's kind of where they started designing for human, right? And then IDEO took, like, that human concept and added not just the physical engineering, but more of a sociological part of it, because I know IDEO's story better than others, and added the sociology to it and our psychology to it, which they did in human factors or human engineering. Like, if you look up human-centered design, like, it goes back to, like, the IDEO, Radiuses, a few other companies, and then skips over to, like, fighter pilots. And, like, what they wanted to do was they wanted to design a cockpit so that human pilot could efficiently and quickly make the right decision, right? actually as fast and efficiently as possible. So the other way is like they wanted, I'll say it again, like they wanted the fighter pilot to be able to make the right decision as efficiently and fast as possible. And so that was human factors, or astronauts, right? They tried to look at like how can we survive in these extreme environments where the wrong decision is like catastrophically the wrong decision, you know.
Absolutely.
Like in this mattress, if I made a purple one, like, oh, no, whatever,
Yeah.
you know. But like if you're driving a plane or a fighter pilot, right?
Yeah.
And you turn left and there's a mountain there. You know.
I always tell people in the medical device community when I'm doing trainings on human-centered design that human factors and human-centered design are like a Venn diagram, because now human factors is so much about like efficacy and so much about usability and for safety and regulation. Like human factors people, their entire job at med device companies are making sure they're aligned with FDA requirements. They don't get to do this exploratory research. So
Yeah, I would say that aligns with the fighter pilot description, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, because of, we have to do this,
Yeah.
right? You know, they're coming from it from a fighter pilot making decisions. You're
Yeah.
coming from medical, you know, making decisions to make sure that the patient is safe, right?
yeah,
Or the device is
right.
safe, right?
But they
And
don't
it
have
is- go ahead.
permission to do exploratory, like because they're just so focused on
Well,
efficacy.
Yeah, so that's the difference between human factors or human engineering and human-centered design. Design brings our emotion and our psychology and our culture and sociology into it, and that's where the skills of someone who's, you know, intuitive to that plays a part. And sometimes you can't train that. I don't know. I think we're still struggling from that.
Yeah.
Anyways, go ahead.
As a
Ask your
trainer, I'm
question.
not sure either. That's a good.
Well, so we were talking about this, you know, coming in today. Actually, I talk about this all the time. I can't. So my problem is I'm a
who are you talking to?
sometimes myself or anyone who'll listen. It's like humanity. We're still trying to learn out what it is to be human, right? So to expect all of us to understand that is like a mistake, right? Like we're still deciding what it is to be human, and that's a simple question, right? Like there's many ways to be human, right? Like you don't just have to be this one way, right? But we're still figuring those definitions out, and so now you're saying like, okay, everybody, let's design things for humans, and people are still trying to figure out what that even is. Think about that. Like, hey, we're going to design for the aliens. Like, okay, do they got feet and legs, or what are they? Right? It's kind of like that. That's what we're saying. Like, I want you to design for this thing. We have no idea what it is. Mm-hmm. It's a living thing, and design something for it. Just come on.
That's why, actually, when a client comes to us with projects, we intentionally need to get much more specific with them, because we can't. And I always tell people that, like, we can't design for everyone. It's impossible. It's overwhelming. But it's like, sometimes they'll be like, well, the customer of this. And I'm like, if we can get focused on a generation or an age group or a region of the country, or even thinking about a mindset, it's so much easier to do our job when it's like a very focused group of people. Mm-hmm. And then you can have a better understanding of what that human group might need or want.
Well, now you're talking about the process, right? Like
yeah.
How you get there.
Yeah.
Right? And people hear this word human-centered design and think it's like for humans, that's all of us. We can just do it for everyone, you know? Like, no, it's not, you know? And all products and all things aren't for everyone. There's very few things that are, right?
In fact, I was just thinking about this before our training, like Amazon. Maybe people could answer, like, a lot of people love Amazon, except maybe, you know, there's a lot to say about the complexity and polarity of the corporate model of Amazon. That aside, hundreds of Americans use it and love it, and
hundreds?
Thousands, millions, millions.
There we go.
But it's like, I had to remember, okay, so wait, they really do, this is a long story, made long. They do really well with lots of people, but they started really specific. They started with book buyers, people that read books and like a little bit tech forward and that want to buy books online. And they got really good at that and then grew bigger. Mm-hmm. And so it was another lesson to me to say, yeah, you have to make a strategic choice about who you're designing for in addition to what you design. They go hand in hand, because if you just design and think, okay, everyone's going to like this, you're not going to get anywhere, in my opinion. But if you get really more specific about who and the needs they have, there's a lot that opens up.
Correct. Yeah, and that's part of the human-centered design process that has been defined, right? Or is still, I would say it's defined. And that's why I use the basketball analogy. Like, I was fortunate to work at IDEA for a few years.
Yeah.
And they were happy to tell everybody the rules. They couldn't be more excited. Of like, hey, we got this new sport. I want to tell you about it. It's called human-centered design. Here's the rules. Here's the diagrams. Here's the toolkit. Here's the way to do it, you know? Because what they realized is that, like, not everyone's going to be a great basketball player. And if you want to have a great basketball team, you need great basketball players. And it so happens that they were really good basketball players. Well, human-centered designers, right? But in this, they're basketball players. And so, like, they would tell you, like, hey, here's the rules, try the game. And everyone's like, oh, it's a fun game, but I can't seem to make it in.
I can't make a basket.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, we can help you make a basket. Right? And then IDEA will shoot the basket, and they're like, that's awesome. And they're like, okay, we want to play another game. And like, then that's how they...
Yeah.
That was kind of their magic.
Well, I think Design Research Collective can do that as well.
Oh, for sure.
And just to... Like, part of founding it for me was to have a more, like, female and, frankly, dare I say it, like, less ego perspective on human-centered design. To, like, make it more accessible feeling and or approachable. And, frankly, so that was part of my inspiration of founding Design Research Collective, is, like, slightly less ego, slightly more feminine.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like it.
I don't know if it still holds. We'll see. I think so.
Oh, I would say so, for sure. I mean, we could talk all about those polarities, male, female. Yeah.
Oh, there's...
It's really interesting. And that lines to this this human design
Let's
research.
do another episode on that. Okay.
More questions.
Question for you about Target. We worked together at Target.
We did. Oh, that's how we met, right?
That
was on a disruptive project, right? That was unbelievable.
That was unbelievable. I just told someone that story yesterday. It's probably one of my top 10 work adventures.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell it, or should I?
Well, I think we have different perspectives on its origin, because we lived the story, right? We were there. But, like, the origin, right? I think we have different perspectives. And
we have to, like, obfuscate a little bit.
The names and the places. Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Being that we're still in Target territory, right? Yeah.
Oh, they're still.
Yeah. So I was, I'll say my story real short, and this would be a short story. Long story short is I was working in the sporting goods department, which they hired me for, and I told them, like, I couldn't even name you a sports team. They're like, I don't think anyone on our team can, our crew can, right? I was like, okay, maybe I'll be interested in this. So I was tasked on helping their camping section, at Target. And Target is light on camping, and so I said, where's a light camping opportunity for people? And festivals, camping festivals, music festivals came to mind, which you're familiar with. And I said, okay, I'll take the team to the biggest festival of music in the United States, and we'll go do some design research there. Yeah. And that's where it started. And I asked my boss, like, hey, I want to rent an RV and drive to Tennessee to a big music festival for research. It's not like a bad idea. Not for research, but for research sounds like a great idea, right? And he was like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Why don't you bring someone, we have a human-centered design team and a videographer. Why don't you bring them with you? It's like, yeah, that sounds great. And I think you just happened to be walking by at that time when I was talking to someone about getting the approval, right? Yeah. And I was like, oh, hey, here she is right here.
Yep.
Why don't you introduce yourself? There's a short story.
I was the one researcher for all of Target product.
The one.
I was the only one for many years. The founding one, actually.
Yeah.
So we got our families together.
That was another story. Deciding to bring families.
Yeah, because we wanted to study family camping.
Right. So
and we got on the Winnebago.
Yeah.
And we took a road trip for less than a week and camped at Bonnaroo Music Festival and actually studied quite a bit and learned quite a bit about family camping.
Yeah. Or festival camping.
Festival camping.
And family camping.
Yeah. And you developed some cool products.
The walking sleeping bag came out of that one.
Yeah.
That was a main institute of that. And the idea that there's such thing as camping light, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not hardcore. And that was a big change in the industry, which I think Target still can, if they wanted to, have a stake in.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like, okay, we'll leave that on the table. If they wanted to. Have a stake in. Right? And the whole industry actually changed at that time to looking at that. So it wasn't just us, there was a whole trend of this light, camp friendly, camp fun.
Instead of like climbing mountains
camp happy.
And ripping, like having knives and eating bears.
Yeah, or like the danger. It could just be fun and easy. Like most music festivals, dare I say all, there's probably not a threat of grizzly bears, right? While you're camping in your tent next to 2 feet next to another tent, right?
Yes.
Right, that's probably not a danger, right? Or having to find your own food. You just go to the...
Yeah, I feel like you designed a bunch of colorful sleeping bags and tents
we
after
did.
that.
Yeah, we did a sleeping bag where you can wear it, and then your legs can pop out. So like in the morning after the festival, you want to get up and don't want to get out of your sleeping bag, you can just kind of pop up in your sleeping bag and go get that cup of coffee, nice and warm. We designed a bunch of colorful tents with patterns on them, brights. There was a lot of things we wanted to do that we didn't do that was just a little more advanced. But yeah,
a little more disruptive?
More disruptive, let's say. Yeah, more disruptive. But, the nice thing so there wasn't a bunch of products we were able to do. We had a whole bunch of stuff we wanted to do that would really change that aisle.
Yeah.
But what was nice to see, although it wasn't my effect, that we were on a trend that the whole industry pushed that way, and made it less scary to go outdoors. And now more people are going outdoors than ever. Like the trends are going up and up and up because, REI, for one, stopped putting giant posters of like going outdoors means climbing, frozen waterfalls to now where it means just like, mom and dad and a kid, hiking and having fun, like making it easy and accessible. And it always had been, but we just kind of went extreme with it for a few years. And now it's been demystified.
Oh, good words. Yeah, totally. What do you do now? I know you do. Here's the secret. He probably is doing 25 million things at once.
My answer always is as little as possible. Actually, I've incorporated a 2 p.m. nap to my day. It's fantastic.
Is that since 50?
Like a 20-minute nap.
Is that since 50?
That's this year, 51, let's say. But yeah, it's like a thing, a permission, But it's a nap and a coffee. It's good.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
I'm supportive of that.
What am I doing? I got a few things going. I have a product design company, which we launched the mock treeless hammock, which is another human-centered design thing. Where
it's a treeless hammock that you can hammock anywhere without needing a tree. It was viral, very successful. I know it was complicated, but this guy
we should do another thing about that. Yeah, but
it has a lot to do with it.
We realize that most places don't have trees, and if you look around, right, there's not a lot of trees.
Or at least good trees.
And there was, when hammocks got popular again because of this whole have fun outdoors, like make it easy. Hammocks had this renaissance again, and state parks, college campuses started to not let you hammock there because of the danger or the damage people were doing to trees. So if you don't hammock tree friendly, there's untree friendly hammocking.
Oh.
So there's tree friendly hammocking, and so we took the trees out of the equation. So you can hammock and be completely tree friendly because you're not using trees.
What's your proudest part about that product or about that?
Well, it was the #1 Kickstarter for the year in Minnesota, so we did achieve that. We beat out all other Kickstarters in our state, which there was a few. It was, and the fact that it launched and still exists right now. Like, all my endeavors haven't been for the pursuit of like dollars, to our bank account's detriment, but that's the way it's been. So I'm of like the 2 companies and 2 innovative products we started. Both of them exist still and exist without me. So they were birthed and became adults, right?
Yes,
like
and you let them go.
Yeah. Well, yes. Let's do another podcast.
What are you most excited about now that you're working on? If
Just
you can share.
new product. Well, yeah. So, I am we're working on a customizable health drink that uses your daily activities and nutrition to recommend like your end of the day or beginning of the day or during work or before, after workout nutritional needs. Yeah, that's one thing I'm looking at right now. Actually, that's something I need to do. One of my naps is get on that.
After your
priorities, right?
Yeah.
And I do have a digital business that's kind of exciting right now. I have been looking at a couple dog products that are somewhat exciting. Thinking about making a dog walking hat. All the weird things that there is, like a dog walking hat. Who knew, right?
Yeah, no.
We don't know. We didn't know we needed it until we needed it, right?
Do you have any more to say, or do you not want to spill the...
Just dog walking hat. I want someone else to design it in front of me. I'll just get the idea out there. So if you have your ideas for a dog walking hat, I'd like to see them. Or if you think you're going to compete with me on this, go for it.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you. I think the universe is really grateful for that idea. I love it. It is... It's just there's
I'm a fan of hats.
So many possibilities.
Maybe I'm designing for an audience of one, but I'll buy one.
Yeah.
Sure.
Chris, what is your advice for younger folks, people like getting into this field, or that want to emulate you and your work and your mindset and all your successes to be able to design such cool things, and they're just getting started?
Yeah. Process is important. Like, it's not a willy-nilly thing, and it's funny that I say that as you were asking the question, because I have another advice too that's counter to that.
Okay.
But process is important, like, and understand that there is a process. Artists do that, musicians, like artists go through a process, right? You see a painting like Jason Pollock, for example, that we all know of, right? Mm-hmm. Jackson. He has no process, right? But yeah, he has a process that he goes through to make those paintings, right? Mm-hmm. That he sees and uses, right? We were talking to someone who emulates Mark Rothko, who creates these like color squares on canvases, right? But he has this entire process that he goes through to do that. It's not just like, little blue, little red. Like, there's a process that produces the greatness, right? So there's a process. Like, find your process, right? And realize that it's not, that there's something there. There's a structure, to that.
That is so helpful, Chris, because in our space, it can feel endless in an intimidating and demotivating way. Yes. And I so appreciate that advice.
Yeah,
personally,
that gives the hope, right? Like that, like this phase will end, and there'll be another phase, even as hard as it is. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, I like to hike, or the times that I do, or be outdoors, and you'll be on a big, 12-mile hike uphill, and you think you're never going to make it, but then you do, and then you're at the top, right? And then there's the next step, right? Mm-hmm. That you can persevere and get there and stick with it, because that is what produces the results.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing is like the counter is like have the freedom to like realize you can explore and ask the questions, you know, and you could break the process and you could change the process, right? You know, like you have that ability, you know, to do it. So, and to realize, you know, in that freedom to explore, like some of us are really good basketball players and some of us aren't going to be, you know, I can't shoot a basket, you know, I'm not really very good at it, you know, maybe if I practice more, right? And then that could be part of it. Like if this is something you're looking to do, like maybe it's going to take practice, right? You're going to have to try a little more at it. And how do you get those insights and how do you produce those meaningful, you know, actions or, you know, meaningful, you know, products for companies that you'll be working for or your own company?
Well, you are a damn good human-centered design basketball player, in my opinion, and I look to you for advice, and I admire you a lot and all the disruptive things you've done. And I'm lucky to have you as a friend and colleague.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening in, and looking forward to next time. Have a great day.